Coming up today on The Story.
And suddenly it hit me, just a minute, this hobby you've got, photography, you're spending all your time and money on that. How much are you giving to the Lord? So I gave away the cameras, I gave away darkroom equipment, and said, right, I've become a Christian, I have no time for this sort of stuff, it's become a god, and I just want to serve the Lord.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colefax. Welcome to The Story. Well, we have a special treat today. Award-winning Christian photographer Ramon Williams is with us, and he'll be sharing an overview of his amazing life journey. He's photographed everyone from Cliff Richards to Princess Diana and has taken photos of historically significant events like the 1968 Billy Graham Crusade and Cyclone Tracy in Darwin in 1974. Raymond joins us via the telephone from his home in Sydney and will be sharing with us all the stories behind his photos. He's having a chat with Eric Scatterbo.
Raymond, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Eric. Do appreciate being here.
Glad to have you with us. And there is so much to your story. I don't know how we're going to get it all in. Let's see a few highlights of your life. You have photographed Billy Graham, Mother Teresa, and several prime ministers. Is that right?
That's correct. Started with Billy Graham in 68 in Sydney, but then 69 Melbourne, I also came down and covered his crusade there, and then 79 in Sydney. But of course, this was just the beginning, because after that, there are quite a few of the other activities that certainly I photographed and reported.
Okay, we're going to get to all that. And you have also photographed several royal visits. And as you mentioned, the 1968 Billy Graham Crusade, Cyclone Tracy in Darwin, just to name a few of the historical events that you've been at. And all of this is from someone who at one point in your life, you gave up all your photography equipment because you thought that that was not the direction that you should go in. Is that right?
That's correct. I was converted the night before my 22nd birthday at a Christian Endeavour missionary rally here in Sydney. And I felt sure that somebody got to Ivor Powell, a Welsh evangelist, before the meeting, told him all about me, because he said, look, you've never sworn, you've never smoked, you've done a good life, which was me, because I'd been in scouting. And he went on, and I felt sure, now, who's told you about me? And then finally the appeal, and he said, right, now, all heads bowed, eyes closed, raise your hand if you'd like to accept the Lord tonight and say that, well, you know about him, but you'd like to love him. You don't love the Lord. That's the sin. So all eyes closed, heads bowed. I was sitting with the girlfriend who'd taken me to the meeting, put my hand up, brought it straight down on her head. So, of course, she knew, and she burst into tears, as women do. And Ivor Powell counseled me after the meeting and led me to the scriptures. And here it was the beginning. This is February 1953.
Wow. Okay, well, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. We want to hear more about that. But first, let's kind of go back all the way to the beginning. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Bexley in Sydney, 1931, so that gives the age away. Went to a Bexley public school and did my apprenticeship as a fitter and machinist. As I say, at the age of 22, became a Christian and became very involved in Christian work right from the beginning. I think that's another story.
Okay, and so why were you under this conviction that you should give up all of your photography equipment if that's something that you enjoyed so much?
The activities that I became involved in was serving 200 down-and-out homeless people, but another worker there at the Commonwealth Street Sydney Rescue Work saw that I needed instruction myself. So he suggested a monthly meeting held by a mission called WEC, Worldwide Evangelization Crusade. Mm-hmm. And it was there that I heard the preaching of full commitment. Do you really believe in the Lord? What are you doing for him? And how much of your life does he control? And this was the sort of teaching that I was getting, and suddenly it hit me, just a minute, this hobby you've got, photography, you're spending all your time and money on that. How much are you giving to the Lord? So I felt, righto, now does the Lord want me to give it up? And the feeling continued and grew. So I went back to my factory where I was working as a fitter machinist, gave away everything. I gave away the cameras, I gave away darkroom equipment, and said, right, I've become a Christian. I have no time for this sort of stuff. It's become a god, and I just want to serve the Lord.
Okay, well, how did you get involved in photography in the first place? Were you always just a creative person, or how did it all start?
Actually, my Uncle Tom. And at the age of 16, he suggested to me, have you got a hobby? Well, no, not really. I just finished high school. And he said, well, what about photography? I'll help you get started. And so he was a very practical type, and he helped me make my first enlarger myself out of a piece of timber, used the lens out of a box camera, tin funnel we used for the light department, and 2 sheets of glass to hold the negatives. It was a very, very basic type enlarger. And I joined 2 camera clubs, St. George Camera Club and the Camera Club of Sydney. Mm-hmm. And my efforts were noticed that every time there was a competition, I put an entry in. Mm-hmm. Finally, one photographer, a professional photographer, said, what lens are you using on your enlarger? I said, oh, it's out of a box camera. Oh, no, he said, you don't do that. There's a special lens for that. So gradually I learned. And then processing, I thank Mr. Alderson, the chemist, and he supplied me with all the gear. He said, now look, when you open your first packet of photographic paper, just take out the first sheet you meet, put it into your glass attachment for the negative, and give it so many seconds, and then put it into developer, fixer, and wash, which I did in the bathroom. I blackened out the room, I pulled out the first sheet of paper, put it into the negative holder, I exposed it, put it in the developer, nothing happened. And this went on for quite a while. So what's going on here? So finally I turned the light on to see what was happening. I pulled out the piece of cardboard that was inside the packet instead of the first sheet of photographic paper. So I learnt very quickly that there is a piece of cardboard inside of the packet as well.
Okay. Sometimes we learn things the hard way. Now, I'm just thinking people listening today, younger people in particular, they have their mobile phones. They're used to taking all these digital pictures. But you were back in the day when you actually had to have a dark room, like you just mentioned, and had to use chemicals to process. I mean, you couldn't just snap a picture and look at it. You had to work. You had to go in the dark room. And I remember myself back when I was in high school, I took an introduction to photography class. And one of the reasons why I didn't really pursue it any further was I was hopeless with all these chemicals and everything.
It certainly makes a difference when you can do your own and you can lighten a particular area or darken an area. It was lovely working in the darkroom.
So those were back in the days when you really had to be committed because you didn't get things instantly. You had to work a lot just to be able to look at the photos that you took.
That's correct, yes. I took some various ones and enlarged them up and was finally able to win quite a few prizes at the various camera clubs. But most of them objected because they weren't exactly wonderful photos. They were just a case that I was putting them numerous entries in all the time.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for stacking the odds in your favor.
Oh, yes. You've got to be subtle in these sort of things.
So anyhow, obviously, you took to it, you enjoyed it, but then, as you mentioned earlier, you decided to give it all up, to give your equipment away because of your growing relationship with the Lord.
That's right. I was convicted, as I say, and what's that in your hand? Lay it down. Give it to the Lord.
But obviously, we're talking to you today as a photographer, an award-winning photographer. So we're going to get to the part where it all comes back. But what came next in your life after you gave it all up?
I would say the next part was Bible college. Mm-hmm. I approached the Sydney Missionary Bible College. They had a 2-year course in those days, 1955, 56. And I went in to learn what's this Bible all about, get the history of it. And it was in there that I suddenly noticed a young lady who was also a senior student. I was a senior student in my second year. And I noticed this young lady, Dorothy Pattermore, and asked her to help with children's camps that I was running on holiday weekends and so on. Mm-hmm. Finally, I realised that we were both headed for Indonesia and both called to WEC. So I suggested perhaps we get together and become engaged. She agreed. So when we joined WEC, I mentioned that we would like to be engaged. That, you can't do that until you've both been on the field for 2 years. That's the mission regulation.
Oh, wow.
So that the woman gets the language and is not distracted. So you can't be in the same place together. So Dorothy was sent to Brisbane. I stayed in Sydney. There was a building program extension of the headquarters. And after 12 months, they said, well, look, your visas for Indonesia haven't come through. We still can't have you in the same place together. Raymond, you go to Brisbane. Dorothy, you come down to Sydney. So we did that for another 12 months. And at the end of that period, they said, look, your visa still hasn't come through for Indonesia, second attempt. Would you mind, we need someone in the kitchen to handle catering. We need a maintenance man out in the grounds. Would you mind getting married? So I said, well, we'd have to pray about that. So it took about 10 seconds. And I said, oh, yeah, we'll do it just to please the mission. We'll get married. We were married in 2 weeks.
Now, Raymond, can I just be honest with you? It doesn't sound real romantic.
You think that wasn't romantic. On the night we were engaged, I broke the axle on the utility we were in.
Oh, golly.
On the night of the honeymoon, I broke the connection with the tail shaft, and I was under it in my wedding suit.
Oh, my goodness.
And hitched it all up with a coat hanger until we could get to... Then we picked up a caravan. We parked on the side of a big vacant block. The next morning, it turned out we're on the side of an airport at Gosford, up in the mid-coast, New South Wales.
Yep.
And there were joyrides going on, and the people selling the tickets were sitting in our utility out of the rain. So we had quite an interesting honeymoon.
You're listening to The Story. Today, award-winning Christian photographer Ramon Williams is sharing his remarkable life journey. Next, we'll hear about Raymond and his wife going to Indonesia to be missionaries. And then eventually, they received the incredible news that they would be having triplets. That and more when we return.
The Story.